Hello everyone. This is Saeed from NextStars. Very happy to be with everyone for another live session with Immitracker. We have Nino here with us, and Blayne is joining in a bit. Hello from beautiful Dubai. It's late evening here, and we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. About how immigration is shaping up under the new government of Canada, Prime Minister Carney. What are the mandates? What are the updates in terms of timeline? We have some good news and some disturbing updates. And hopefully at the end of this conversation, the audience can leave with a little bit more information and clarity around how to plan their immigration journey. Welcome to the podcast, Nino.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm really happy to be back.
Wonderful. If you want to give a little bit of introduction about yourself and Immitracker, that would be great so we can dive in.
Yeah, for sure. So Immitracker is one of the better known immigration tech platforms in Canada and Australia. Oh, hey, Blayne.
Hi, Blayne.
Hey, how's it going?
Perfect timing. I was just doing the intros. Okay.
Good to have you here with us.
Co-founder just joined, so he's going to take it away after I'm done perfectly because we can both introduce ourselves. So Immitracker, we call it the Ways of Immigration. Essentially, it's a community-driven data aggregator where we collect anonymously case data about various immigration programs, visas and citizenship to Canada and Australia, and we help people figure out the processing times and next steps in their application. And given how volatile and difficult immigration is these days, this is one of the only sources of truth and data that is available in the world of immigration. And we're really excited to see how people are going to be using, especially in the age of AI, when there's so much data to work with. Blayne, over to you.
Yeah, my name is Blayne Kumar. I'm the CEO and the Chief Strategy Officer for Immitracker, so co-founder along with Nino. And I'm also President and CEO of Bright Immigration, which is one of Toronto's more predominant immigration consultancies, and also founder of Improved, which is a software to help people understand their immigration options and providing more transparency. So I've subconsciously had quite a bit of passion for transparency and became much more conscious in terms of creating a more transparent immigration environment for people to take part in.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your presence. I think, let's just, without any further ado, let's just dive into the topic. Last we spoke, we were heading towards the election, and we were seeing some mixed signals from the data from what you guys were seeing at Immitracker. We had some thoughts and assumptions about how things are going to shape up. So how's it going under Prime Minister Carney's government? Are you pleasantly surprised, not at all surprised, or a little bit surprised, or it's just par for the course? What do you guys see?
I mean, me personally, I don't know if it's pleasantly, but I'm definitely surprised because a lot of things. Well, let's start on a high level, and I think Blayne can really dive into it more in terms of what he thinks is happening on the immigration policy side of things. But generally, what I've been seeing in terms of the people joining the community and contributing the case data has really been reflecting the draws that they have been doing, and the draws that they have been doing isn't exactly what people have been expecting to be coming up in this quantity this year. So definitely whatever draws you're seeing is being reflected on the Immitracker side, right? Like I haven't been seeing a lot of movement in the CEC community, but you know what movement I've been seeing over the past 1 month? Federal skilled worker. Because there's people coming in through federal skilled worker French-speaking program category, but that's not something that seemed very obvious in the beginning. Also, they introduced the new processing time tracker, which they can show like in more detail what your processing times are going to look like depending on when you applied. But for example, for programs like Citizenship, that's still not accurate. For the analysis for the first 6 months of the year that we did, it was still close to 6 months maximum. They're putting over 10 months to citizenship processing time right now. Generally a lot of thoughts that I would like to dive into, but let's just from my personal point of view and what I'm seeing from the data, what I am seeing and what I was expecting based on the trends and the immigration levels for plan for 2025 is nothing alike. I don't know, Blayne, what do you have to add to this?
Well, I guess let me start with the positive sides, or at least the positive movement where I'm seeing things. One is transparency. The government
Yeah.
seems to be doing more than less on that, which is nice to see. Of course, there's always two. I said this in the last podcast, and it's just my ethos. There's two. Truth is multidimensional, and there's different types of truth. So, people are going to have perspectives of like, oh, this is great, but are they doing this just to get through judicial review and to make this, so is there a hidden intention? And that's kind of what, in every aspect I look at immigration, I simply don't know, but I could identify what the truth could be on one side and what it could be on the other side. I just don't know what's the predominant leading factor. But one thing is transparency. So we saw that in two major ways. One is the refusal notes that are automatically presented, which is, as an immigration professional, that's really helpful to have. So that's a pretty big improvement. So again, but there's questions of like, well, are we going to see more? Is that just going to give them a reason not that, make it more challenging, or provide, oh, we already provided it to you, so they don't provide more details, or, that you don't tap into GCMS notes as much, because the GCMS or the ATIP notes are detailed and provides other perspectives that a simple paragraph in a refusal letter doesn't. So, that could be a way to ease things down. But on the flip side, it is way more transparent and it's right to the point. So that's good. And the second is the immigration processing times. It gives a little bit more details that I think is helpful. It still doesn't address the aspect of what's the real, what's the data, what's actually the likelihood. Yeah, 1 month left, but all they're doing is making the processing times they've already listed just made it a little prettier by having the date that they've submitted it by. But you still don't know. Right. So, but again, it's heading in the right direction, which for me as a transparency advocate in immigration, wanting a more ethical, honest, transparent system, I like seeing those things. So that's helpful. In terms of the policies, well, what I'm seeing, I don't know. I think I said in a podcast that I've heard this from a wise person. Government could neither be smart and strategic and smart, or just not, or just stupid, essentially, to be honest. And what I mean by that is, you see something like, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. For example, I think a lot of people would agree with this: the French immigration focus, right? Like, anyone that's traveled across Canada really understands, how French plays a role in Canada and how it doesn't, right? And it's not making sense for a lot of people why such a heavy push. The only thing that could make sense is a political reason. For those who aren't aware, Quebec plays a really important role in politics, etc. Like, you could dive into that, and there's a language. Language is the main focus of the Quebec region from a political standpoint. So that could be a point, fine. But from actually servicing Canada, I'm having a hard time truly understanding why. Like, why is that? Why are my clients out there spending a ton of energy trying to learn French? And then yet the government's listing AI coming in to be translators. So it's like, I'm not getting clear. So again, are they smart, or is there something that's going on in the background politically? I don't know what, maybe cultural, maybe there's other factors at play here. Or are they really trying to advance a multilingual agenda, which, I'm having a hard time to understand why. Like, why do that in immigration, particularly when we could have, more focus on health, for example, transportation, other areas. Business
STEM,
programs,
which basically disappeared, and they said it was not going to.
like, business programs are not here, and I think that's where I'm the most frustrated with right now, is the lack of business immigration. We have a massive succession problem in Canada. We're in second generation businesses, maybe first generation businesses. The baby boomers are retiring. Who's buying their businesses? What's going on with that? We have a huge issue with the US right now. Like, I'm very dumbfounded why we have no movement in the business side. So I think that's frustrating to see that, especially when SME, small medium businesses make up, a huge chunk of employment in Canada. So so anyways, so what do I think? I've always said it before. I don't know what the truth is. I'll have a lot of major questions that will probably never be answered. I'll never get an answer for. So all I could say is, overall, though, I think immigration is moving in a better direction because it's starting to be handled with more care, right? And I do think
Yeah.
that it's being handled with more care.
There's
And
more thought put
there's more
behind it,
thought.
like they're
Yeah.
careful, yeah.
Why the thought? I don't know exactly, but there is more thought behind it.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Nino, if you want to add anything to that.
I think one point that I want to cover, and Blayne, maybe you have some thoughts about it. It's the very major discrepancy between the immigration levels plan for 2025 and what we've actually been experiencing. I understand that the immigration levels plan was put together under a different admin, so that might have a part of it. But we were thinking of doing an article of using as well as Immitracker to figure out like what are the numbers that we're seeing for people being selected in draws versus like what was said in the immigration levels plan for 2025. And the discrepancy between some of the programs is huge. Like there's a separate category, for example, for the in Canada focus, and I think the number for that was around 82,000. And from what I did the math on the amount of people selected, for example, under CEC, it's under 25,000 for this year, which is obvious they're not going to make up that number in the last remaining 2 months of 2025, even if they do massive draws of 5 to 10,000 people, it's just not possible, right? And then there was the French stream, which we discussed right now. The percentage that the French stream was supposed to take out of the total immigration was supposed to be no more than 7%, I believe, for 2025. But then if you look at their numbers, it's actually comparable with CEC significantly. So it's over 15,000 people that got invited for French speaking. So my question here is, and this could be a general topic for discussion. And also, like I mentioned, the STEM draws are almost non-existent, but then we're talking about building an AI hub in Canada and make us like a capital for tech development. We're trying to compete with the US. Yeah, exactly. H-1B rejects, they said they want to do them, but then there's no pathway for STEM workers right now to get PR because CEC is dysfunctional. So people with Waterloo degrees or U of T degrees, if they have 515 points, they can't get selected right now. So my question is, what are your thoughts on that discrepancy? Why do you think that happened? Like, generally, what do you think is happening with that direction? Because that's a very big concern that I personally know people have questions for me for, and I don't have the answers.
I will add a quick point before I turn it back to Blayne. I think it's the business immigration particularly right now is being hit on two fronts. Number one is the main business federal immigration program, starter visa, with all the flaws. Obviously, we wrote an article also at the Financial Post in April, advocated for kind of a revamp of the program, renovation of the program. As you rightly mentioned, Blayne, there's a huge succession problem in Canada, and why we can use these foreign entrepreneurs as a driver, but also as agents of these businesses to open markets for them in all these different. Anyways, but another big hit that the program has recently got is these transparency that with the new timelines. The starter visa is now 10 years, like LFN, right? I as a business consultant, I don't feel comfortable putting anyone into a journey that's going to take more than 10 years, particularly if it's on such a time-sensitive matter, such as launching a startup. So I'm also not sure what's the game plan. Maybe like what we are hearing also here from I'm in Dubai right now for GITEX, and we have some conversations on the sidelines. We had an event actually 2 days ago with one of these designated organizations, Roseview Global, and we talked to some people from the government as well, and looks like everybody is like unsure, but they all agree that this doesn't make sense. and I'm wondering, maybe you guys know, like how can we connect the dots here? Because right now it's impossible to attract someone that's would have options, would never sign up for to relocate their business to Canada, and this is happening in such a time that we really need to move fast, and diversify and all that. So I guess like around the table, like Blayne, what do you think? Like how can they? Who's going to take responsibility? Is it in the Foreign Relations Ministry, IRCC? Who is going to be like really taking the torch and grabbing attention
for all of this? Actually, both for like the discrepancy of I think the common theme here that I think would be good to unpack is why do we think these discrepancies are happening, and who do you think is like in charge of making these calls that were not expected?
And that's why I have to just be frank. Like, you think what we're speaking of right now is original, and they haven't heard about this for the last 3, 4, 5 years? Any
They
podcast,
have.
an immigration professional who has a good understanding of business immigration has been advocating for this for the last few years at least, right? And we all know
Yeah.
ISBC does at some point, and government does kind of learn something about what the industry is saying, right? Especially from the previous with Trudeau's government, they did try to be way more productive in getting feedback from the ground, right?
Yeah.
Again, I'm just trying to show light that they were doing something than nothing. They were doing that. So let's be frank. They know this, but the question is, why is nothing happening? Like, really,
Yeah.
like, to me, it doesn't make sense. To a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. It seems like they're purposely. So again, we don't know what the inner workings of the country is, right? So whether countries are working with other relationships, and they're maybe in a new global climate, Canada is going to have a different role, and we just don't know what that role is, and they're definitely not going to share it with us. Or maybe there's an alignment. Again, I don't know. I'm just speculating 100%. And no matter who I talk to, it's all speculation. All I could take is what is their perspective. I'm like, okay, that could be true. That's now in my mind as a possibility, but I don't know. So let's put that I don't know aside, because that's a little bit of a pop out. And let's just say we need to be mindful of where is Canada's projection. We're underpopulated. We do have a focus to build a population, to 100 million, right? That's still in line with the current administration of where they're not saying that right now, but that's still the crux of it.
Ethos,
The ethos. So population growth is massive. So whether or not they see it as not a focus right now, hey, let's maybe clean this up first and then come to the business. That's possible. I'm not sure what they're thinking on that side. Maybe that's what they're doing. But when it comes to other immigration programs, the French, another thing too is, you're right, the CEC programs are eating up a chunk. But frankly, a lot of our clients are falling into other streams, right? So a lot of our clients are falling under healthcare, for example, because they work 6 months as this role, which isn't regulated, and you're able to get a job in, right?
What about STEM, for example? Because those I know a lot of people that don't fall under anything after.
Yeah, but the CEC, it is there, but some people are bleeding into the other.
Oh yeah, I understand. So that's what you're saying.
In Canada, could be a combination of many of those things. And French, tons of my clients are now bilingual, right? So
wow.
So they're falling into the French side. Now, I haven't looked into the numbers or the breakdowns yet to know the two, so I don't know, but I definitely could say that a lot of our clients are falling into the other categories as well. But when it comes to the STEM aspect, I don't, quite frankly, the STEM program is there and it's available. And the good news is they could just turn it on when they want to, right? But there's a trickle down effect. So if I'm speaking to people who want to come to Canada, I tell them the STEM's there, but hey, it's been closed for a year. So them going to go do a language test and getting their ECA done, they're probably not even in the pool now, right? So, even if there's draws, and that takes re-education, remarketing, awareness, bringing them back to the table. And Canada's immigration system moves so fast, yet other immigration systems move a lot slower. So if someone is looking at America and other countries, sometimes they would see America and say, oh, okay, there's nothing in Canada right now. Okay, I guess it won't be for years. So they don't even think of revisiting it frequently again either, right?
Exactly.
So you have to look at the immigration side as a business, right? Like if someone comes into your software and it's a crappy experience in a software, to bring them back is incredibly hard. It's the same thing for immigration too. So with that being said, the STEM aspect, there is a lot of gaps, and you're talking about the H-1B and all that. And I'm in my head, yeah, right.
Like we're going to do anything about it. We haven't even figured out what to do with the STEMs here.
Exactly. Right. So, and that's, I did make a comment on LinkedIn. I was like, I don't feel comfortable. Like I would advise clients on, if I spoke to an American, H-1B holder, explain to them, but I'll tell them like, you could come here, but I don't feel comfortable under this right now that you will actually have an avenue to immigrate, right? Like it's still a large risk to take. And a lot of the top skilled people are in their 30s, for example, right? They're in their 30s. Like, we have to be mindful too, is if we want to attract the best, right, then we have to have programs to target the best and to make it available for the best.
Yeah.
And right now we're still very broad, we're still very broad in that. So like specialized knowledge, like, how do we identify top people in their fields, top researchers, academics, like what immigration pathways do we have for them?
Do we have a good identification system for differentiating between different levels? Like when you look at the NOx system, sometimes you have very different professions under similar NOx, which doesn't make sense. And especially in this day and age when you can have somebody that's like incredibly specialized and would be very impactful to your economy. Like it doesn't make sense that they wouldn't be prioritized in some way whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm listening to you guys talk about these different programs and how, the different people the perception of their experience is very different than I think the projected, but also maybe very different than what is reported from immigration. And I think it's a little bit like user experience of someone with immigration could be like similar with Canadian healthcare. When you're getting a referral, what is the wait time, for a cardiologist? Is it like
I don't know,
1
6
week,
months, 12 months?
6 months, 12 months? Like, but it's highly dependent, right? In terms of
Depending
like
on where you are,
where
what
you
the
are,
timing is, who's your
exactly.
health
And, like,
provider.
you follow up, and like there's so many different factors that play, so you can't really pin down what is the timeline, how long am I waiting. But you guys mentioned on something that I think it's a little bit of a black box to us, but maybe you can shed some light based on what you're hearing, at least in the circles. Canada's role, how do we redefine Canada for the next decades to come, and one of the topics that was actually discussed in our private conversations is that the moment they tipped the immigration, the population is now going down, like the alarm is sounding. So we have a problem in terms of population growth in Canada, which one of the solutions that has worked is immigration. So and yes, it opens, it closes, right, but how I guess like for someone that's like planning their life, how can they get some information about what is like how Canada is going to be perceived, and do I see myself in that story? Because often it comes with a lag, when something is out in the news, I position myself to that, but by the time I get to it, like the focus,
something new happens.
Completely different.
Yeah.
So what can you share on that?
Well, one thing I think, and maybe Blayne, you'll agree with me on this one, we need to see what they publish in November, right? Both in terms of their economic plan and both the immigration levels plan. That's going to define them as an admin, pretty much. Because we don't know what this government came in May, and they've been trying to build their own foundation, but even with immigration, right? The immigration levels plan that was set out for them for 2025 was put together by a different admin. So they did not adhere to it, which is where I personally have questions, because if you put out a plan, adhere to it. But they did not adhere to it, I'm assuming because of their own, like Blayne said, we don't know what's happening in the inner workings, but they have some sort of ideas for how they want to position themselves and what kind of, like, I don't know, political alliances they want to make, or how they want to, which direction they want to put the country on. That's not known to us. It will be known to us once they openly declare it in November and say, this is where we want to go economically, this is the country's development priorities, this is the country's immigration plans, and then we will know. So it's a little bit hard for me to say. I don't know, Blayne, do you have any different thoughts here?
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to do, Nino, I'm trying to avoid saying I don't know moving forward, because I think that's a known fact. So I want to try to be more concise and like, what can I share of value to the audience?
Yeah, fair.
So, I guess let's just look at the leader of the country, right? And regardless of your political stance, one thing is to me, he's a progressive thinker, right? He's looking at the world as a different way, right? And some would call him like a globalist, for example. So let's just look at that aspect. And there is aspects that excite me about it, because there's so much changing in this world right now. It's very hard to lean on the old ways, even though I'm gravitating to the old ways, because that's, especially how I feel. But it does feel like we have to take some risk now. We do have to take risk in the country. So The question is what risk are being taken and how much transparency is that risk going to be shown to us? Because is our population, the Canadian population, which is very conservative by nature, it's worked for us forever, very stable banking systems, very stable,
very risk averse,
very risk, and it's been successful, right? Canada's an incredibly successful country. A little less so in the last decade, but still, not
generally,
from an economic standpoint. But let's look at that. So housing is going to be the critical thing right now, but housing isn't just solving housing. It's also looking at the way we live. It's also looking at, modular housing right now, which I think we all know is a big.
It's been a big conversation,
right.
Yeah.
It's a big mandate right now, right? So modular housing, construction, energy sovereignty, right? AI sovereignty. We don't have that yet, but hopefully we'll see that coming in, right? So there's a lot of things we have to catch up on, but I do think we have a forward-thinking government in a sense. They're one of experiment, and they're an experimental government. So that's my intuition. That's what I'm seeing. And if I had to look at the leadership and say, how would I just describe them? That's how I would. And not to mention his background in writing on ESG, et cetera, right? So that's where we have to look at it. So to answer your question, what does Canada look like? I think Canada is going to be a country that's going to have some experimental factors, and it is an incredibly unique country. It stands alone compared to anyone else in the world. That in a sense that we are brother and sister, no matter what our political issues are, with the largest economy in the world, and one of the most creative economies. The U.S. is one of the most creative economies in the world, right? But Canada's always had a unique position there, and Canada is very small and nimble. It's like a startup, right? It could move very quickly. It could adjust accordingly. Mind you, that they have a board of directors, which we call the UK, right? The King Charles is still on the board of directors, right? So we still have that. But the question is our country about to be part of a bigger company? Are we about to get acquired? Not the US I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, are we playing a part in a bigger system, or
are we trying to do our own thing?
Are we going to do our own thing? Personally, I think we're going to be playing a bigger system, right? And just looking at Carney's resume and background, like, he's a global. The guy knows he knows how to play a global game, right? So if you think that the global game is going to change, but we still have to work with other people, and we want to start seeing how we could support each other, maybe have a balance of sovereignty, just a balance of it, but have a balance of global development and working together. So I was just at a cybersecurity conference not too long ago, and a lot of Belgium was there, a lot of Europeans are there, right? So you could and definitely a lot less Americans for sure. So you could, even at the conferences. So I recommend going to conferences and speak if it's a new conference for you. Speak to the organizers, ask them, hey, what's different this year? You probably hear the U.S. has dropped and global, like, Europeans have increased. Right. So
because there's more motivation for them to also, because everybody's realizing they can't depend on the US for everything.
Right. And that's a huge, massive change, huge change.
Absolutely.
And you speak to anyone, economist, or you read any article, we won't be able to replicate that. We don't have, Europe can't be, there's no country that could be a US market anytime soon, at least, right? So,
but we can be our own thing. We can be something different.
And the thing is, like, Nino, you know me, obviously you know me, but I'm from a certain camp of progressive, but also leaning on the simplicity of life. Like, economies are important, really important, but how important is a huge economy, right? What's really important is food, shelter, social living,
practical economy, one that works for the population.
Clean water, right? Like, these are the ingredients of life, is what's important to us, right? And the economies are we believe we need really big economies to service those things, but we don't necessarily need those all the time. And there's a lot of technology. There's hydroponics, green technology, renewable energy. There's modular housing. There's a lot of technology available.
Things that Canada could also go into right now.
Yeah, that could address the elements of living. Now the question is, though, is what does that cost us? Now some people would say it will cost us some freedoms. Like, I don't want to get into that, but that's a simplistic. So if anyone's wondering about Canada, what that future looks like, Canada's always been an incredible, intelligent country. I do believe that Canada is the smartest country per capita in the world. Right? If you look at the outcomes, not to mention if you look at the U.S., tons of Canadians live in the US and built amazing companies in the US, right?
Yeah.
So
We're very good at producing the people, but one thing that I have a question about, and this, I know we're trying to avoid saying I don't know, but then I guess this is a question I would like to put out into the void and hope that the government will answer, is that what I personally have a concern about, as somebody that's been observing the actions in the immigration space, at least this year, I feel like what's being said and what's being done are a little bit of a two different things. And it feels like the strategy is very haphazard and very slapped together because there isn't a bigger picture that they're operating under. Like, let's say, take 2019 when you had very standard immigration draws. We knew maybe every 2-3 weeks you would get a drop. It would most likely be related to one of these programs. It was a standard way that people could predict and operate with. And like you mentioned, Blayne, this is a time of great change. But what comes with great time of great change is great uncertainty. And I think what's happening that's being very much trickled down into the immigration system right now, and that's my personal assumption, is that the government hasn't set out these priorities yet. They haven't really
we
chosen
haven't
how
seen a budget,
exactly.
right? Like you
Yeah,
said,
exactly.
right?
They haven't figured out who they want Canada to be. Like, yes, you mentioned that population growth is something that we need to do, but there's a huge anti-immigrant sentiment right now. They can't just start pumping the population growth with massive, even with the French-speaking draws, they're bringing in out-of-country people, and there is a pushback from it, especially from the population that's working professionals. There's a huge pushback from them because they're saying, why are we prioritizing out-of-country migration when we deprioritize in Canada focus, which by the way
People
was
speak
a
a language
stated focus.
you don't hear.
Yeah.
Like
And they're
let's be honest,
speaking a
you don't
language that can be integrated in the economy anywhere outside of Quebec, but then we're bringing them through programs that are supposed to be for outside of Quebec. And I would love to see the data about how many of these French speakers end up moving to Quebec at the end of the day, because how are they going to integrate in? Okay, you can integrate in parts of Ontario and New Brunswick, sure. But aside from that, who speaks French in BC or Alberta? Where are they going to get a job there? So they have to be either perfectly bilingual, or you end up coming across that problem. And I think what's happening is that there are certain decisions being made right now that are, okay, let's just check off these boxes because these are the lowest hanging fruit. Let's keep the PMPs going because the province knows what it's doing. Let's keep the French going because it'll keep Quebec happy, and this will not support, this will like kind of, and also we'll maintain our mandate of increasing Francophone in Canada, which is a big mandate they had, but the rest
is
is,
negotiate right now, right? Because the Bloc
yeah,
Québécois is like a huge entity. The Bloc Québécois is the Quebec government. So the
yeah.
recent politics has put them in a very strong position. So I can see this
Mhm.
as a very easy negotiation lever, right? So, and that's where I think
Absolutely.
that's where it could very well be to explain the
Yeah.
French side, right? But let's take a
Yeah.
step back and just say, listen, it's a bigger game of chess. This chess game is not one
Exactly.
that you play in a few minutes. It's one that you play over a year, well, in this case, years.
Multiple years, yeah.
And yeah, and we don't know. But if anyone's looking to come to Canada, one thing I would say, if I had to really boil it down, it's let's just look at the basics, our climate, right? So like our geographical location at the very basic is probably one of two. I think Russia is the next one, safest geographical locations you could be in the entire world in the future, right? At least that's what it's, mind you, if war is a different conversation, but climate
Yeah.
change, right?
You're talking climate wise.
War is a
climate.
very different conversation, actually. but yeah, so look at that. Politically, we have a very good political system still. Our court systems are good. Our just, regardless of our opinions about this, and I'm not crazy about some of the things that's happening. I think that's changing, and it could go towards a different direction. But as it is now, it's still world class, right? And the people are still amazing, even though there's an anti-immigrant sentiment. That's
It's still one of the most welcoming countries in the world,
and it's
regardless.
expected, to be honest. Whenever something goes up, you're gonna have
You're
something that
immediately going
goes
to have a
down.
backlash, yeah.
Yeah, so there has to be a bit healthier balance. Which, if we had a government that actually genuinely cared about integration, we could have avoided that. And that's what frustrates me the most. Is we had this amazing, we still have it, this amazing opportunity to crack a problem that is equal to a deep tech problem. It's equal to quantum computing. It's equal to cold fusion. It's equal to AGI. And, it's actually beyond that. I'll tell you why it's beyond that, because it's something that we don't know how to solve, and we've never solved it in history, which is very good, healthy immigration, right?
It's a very difficult problem.
Immigration that really works. Canada immigration's working because it's a fast money grab, and it's just like a quick pump. but is it actually working? The numbers don't support that. We have higher negative sentiment. We have people leaving Canada, which are top people leaving Canada. We have mistrust, so and this is
integration is terrible. Systems
yeah,
are over. Like we had the housing problem, had
yeah,
the healthcare system problem. We
right,
couldn't absorb, basically.
yeah, and we could have controlled every bit of that, right? We really could have.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I think, and I've said this and I've echoed this in any talk or conversation I have, I want to view immigration as we do with deep tech. I want to view it as a deep tech issue, not like not a sociological issue, not that a
No,
psychological.
it's a data issue.
Treat it with that respect that we do for those things. Give it academic power, give it research, give it conferences, support it.
Analyze patterns, figure out how how decisions were made, and say maybe this is a very good separate point to unpack. One of the talks that I'll be doing in November is about why are we not utilizing more of the incredible tech tools we have available now, such as machine learning, to figure out immigration patterns to make more informed immigration policy decisions. Because from my point of view, I think it's lacking.
I think this is like, and I'm gonna agree also with Blayne that still with all the flaws, we are very small country, very smart country, and
we are a very smart country, yeah.
And I'm gonna reflect on the famous Churchill's quote that democracy is like, it sucks, but we can't find a better system. It's still a very good system. It's still, like we have it moves us slow. Sometimes it's irregular, but it's still like the collective wisdom of all often prevails. This issue exists for every other country. I'm happy or unhappy to report. I had conversations with people that are managing business immigration to Europe here in Dubai, and they all were frustrated because also they were having a hard time trying to justify their governments about the importance of some of these business immigration programs. And I showed a report to them, a study done, actually I think it's done by University of Toronto, with one of them, that it says and it's done for Canada, that native born Canadians start like fewer number of businesses compared to their immigrant counterparts, and it's statistically significant. But there's one caveat: you have to give them 7 years in order to start creating businesses at a higher rate. So if you look at these immigration programs from a data perspective, specifically if you want to see if a startup visa is a successful program, you shouldn't really look at these businesses in the first 2 years. You have to look at these people, put a GPS on them and see how they integrate into the society, and then look at them 10 years down the road and see what they've done. What are the impacts? What are the net, is it net positive or net negative? So this is a across the board problem. But I want to ask you two, to chime in. And I agree, we are getting closer to Europe. There's a lot of conversations that we have had here. They know more about Canada. And I think as our government is trying to also, connect us with a little bit of a greater system now that we have a little bit of turmoil with the US. How would that look like from an immigration perspective? Do you see at all in the next 5-10 years that we become part of that bigger, Schengen area? And if that's the case, do we have to align some of our quotas, if we're going to get that much of integration going with them? And is that something that even you guys think about it right now, or you think this is just too early to think about these things?
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's too early. I think now is the time right now, and it's actually going to happen faster than later because his term just started and he has 3 more years to go, right? So, and that turmoil is going to, we're already starting to feel the impacts of the turmoil, right? So we have to, and it's going to happen faster than later. What's interesting is there's a lot of mechanisms already established. There is the Schengen, which is like bringing all these countries together and be able to have an immigration and a mobility platform that works, right? You have that. You also have a very old allies that's bounded into the Commonwealth system. They're aligned. That's the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, right? And then whatever other regions and countries that kind of fall in. But those are so I could see alignment on that. You could also see, I could see those relationships forming in those areas. I could see like a Northern European and Canada relationship for the Arctic, for example, which probably won't work because the U.S. is going to definitely fight for that, and we'll probably have to negotiate more than anything, right? Because that would be our greatest negotiation power. Is the Arctic, I think, at least, right? From just the shipping, forget the military, just the logistics and the cost and just all of that. And no matter what AI, no matter whatever happens, unless we lower the cost of manufacturing, AI helps us, which I do think is going to happen. I think onshoring is going to be massive. I think that that's one aspect. The other aspect is cheaper shipping, right? And the Arctic provides a wonderful avenue for that. So I guess where I'm coming from is I think we're going to move towards that global side. I don't think we have a choice to. And what does that mean for immigration? Well, what does that mean is a lot more mobility with those who have partnerships. So for those who are, looking at citizenships in other countries, for example, or business folks who are, looking to get more passports, you having a British passport, Australian passport might be just as good as having a Canadian one. And again, this is just purely speculative. Like it's nothing there. It's just, if you had to see alignments, that's where I would see it. And I also like to see the China relationship. What does that really look like for Canada, right? That's a very touchy subject, but because you have Canada and US and you have India as well. But like, what does that look like? And at the end of the day, it's like, we became a global world not that long ago. It's been a few decades max, right? Became very globalized. Now, do we have to stay so globalized to do well? And what is well? Like, what does well mean, right? The happiness index is what we should be paying attention to. Like Bhutan is trying to do that, and I know that sounds a little hippy dippy, right? But that's the reality, though. Like that's what matters is your population and how healthy and happy they are. And with AI, with this development, with where we are, what's the real need for it, right? And one thing I'll leave off with, or maybe not leave off, but one thing just to summarize this, because I do think it's a philosophical perspective as well, is, we came from this age of this American dream idea, right? And then it bled over to Canada's dream. And the idea here surrounds around like, hey, come here, you can make a lot of, work hard, put down your head, make a lot of money, and be able to live a prosperous life. Any Canadian that's been here for 10 years or more knows that that's not really true, right? It doesn't work that way in Canada. It does work that way in the US, maybe less. I can't speak, I'm not American. But in Canada, it's never really been true, right? That's not the way Canada operates. Now, we may have been programmed to think that, but the question is are we as a society operating like that, but we don't have that outcome available to us? And that's where I think we are. And I think we have to define what Canada is as a culture, which has existed, and there is a Canadian culture, but we don't know, it's not communicated, nor, it's a post-national, Trudeau said it himself, right? Like we're going to be the first post-national state. And maybe that's kind of where we're looking at, we're still going here, right? But the question is where do we stand? And that's it. And that's why I do think now is a great time as a country for us to put together a healthy society that's focused on metrics of happiness and overall health. We have all of the tools available. We have brilliant minds and people. And now's the time to start doing that. And yes, global trade and all that's really important. We're going to work that out. But now's the time to look inwards and start thinking, hey, what can we really do together? What can we do ourselves to, like right now I'm exploring making my lawn into a food lawn, right? Like, so no more grass, just all up growing food, and keep it available for people to eat. Like if we were to do something that simple, just think about the psychology of food security, knowing your neighbor has fruit trees available. Just think about that though, right? Think about you not being able to store groceries and knowing that there is just something that simple, something so simple could create a sense of security in us that's more than it was yesterday. So that's
one thing that I would add to that, though, that you mentioned is that it's very important to define who we are right now. And like, say, to your point that, yes, we could be exploring trade with Europe, but me personally, I don't think we're becoming a Schengen state at all. Europe has enough on its plate right now to deal with, and adding to risk it and to add also, first of all, that's such a big can of worms to open geopolitically that it's just, I'm not even going to dive in there. Like knowing Europe and being somewhat from that space, I understand how it works. They're not going to be doing Schengen, at least my point of view. Blayne is right that there potentially would be some new economic pathways for partnerships and immigration programs and exchanges going on with Europe, as both Canada and Europe realize that they need to be standing on their own 2 feet. America is not coming in to save them anymore, regardless. And Europe is especially realizing that with things like war conflicts, right? Because this is something they have to really acutely keep in mind right now. What I think is aligned in terms of the world of immigration, and again, Blayne is right about that point of view, is like this is the time to look inward. There was both Europe and Canada had a rather more lax, let's say, in certain aspects, immigration policy over the past 5 to 10 years. It was a population growth to fill in the in-demand occupations, whatever it is. That is going away. And this is not just Canada that's like making its numbers less right now or becoming more targeted. Look at Denmark. Look at Scandinavia in general. They are now correcting aggressively in another direction where their immigration systems are significantly stricter than what they were 10 years ago and significantly more prioritized and focusing on what the country needs. And what does the country need? Goes back to Blayne's point. How do we make our country a better place? It's less about focusing outward and our impact on the world. It's about focusing inward and how can we build up better. And all the conversations that you're seeing happen in Canada, right? Like for example, Build Canada. It's a nonpartisan organization, very big fan of the work that they're doing. What is the entire ethos of this organization? How can we make Canada better? Yes, they talk about in terms of like in relation to the US and in relation to the world. But a lot of it is how can we make Canada a winner in certain aspects, economically in certain industries, or how can we like the whole cultural aspect of it, like who do we stand for as a society? What should we be prioritizing? How can we become better? Because we are not America. And as somebody that's lived both in America and Canada, I can say that they're very different places. And there's a reason why I moved to and stayed in Canada, because I liked how the culture here worked. It prioritized people. It was more welcoming. Yes, you can make more money and go further in the US, but you are more comfortable and you are happier in general in Canada, which is the biggest thing that I told everybody after I moved here. The contrast is huge. You don't feel like you have to be proving yourself and dying for an outsized outcome in Canada. You do feel like that as an immigrant in the US that wants to build something. That was the American dream inherently. It's not the Canadian dream. The Canadian dream is growing within a community and finding a place for yourself here and gradually increasing until you find something that you're passionate about, which is why it takes the 7 years that you mentioned, because it takes us a longer time to ramp up here. We're not driving ourselves to the same level of insanity that we would in the US. So, and this is why like prioritizing who we are as a country, who we are as a culture, what do we need to be prosperous economically? What do we need for our society to be happy? This is the new conversation happening both in Europe and in Canada. How can we be independent? And how can we be happy along the way?
I think, there's a lot of really, really interesting points. And that's what I love about talking with you guys, because our conversations are informed either by personal experiences or data. This is not something that you can find on ChatGPT or online, as lived experience of people. And that's what I love about the work we do in immigration, is because there's always like a person, a family, a life that's attached to it. This wasn't part of the agenda that I shared with you, but if I may, I want to pose a little bit of a philosophical question your way, because that's something that I've been thinking about, and I've even considered and contemplated of writing an opinion on it. And that's, in this new world, I'm wondering, this definition of citizenship is like, it has to be different. I think, you don't necessarily need to be in Canada to be considered Canadian. I think, and that goes back to really what is Canadian. And I do agree with you, Nino. I have traveled to US extensively. It's a very different country. I thought it would be more or less the same, but it's massively different. It's like even New York is different. It's very different.
Very different, yes.
People are different. The vibes are different. It's just it's a different place. But what it means to be a Canadian, and I researched countries like Estonia. They are issuing residency programs that you don't have to be like within Estonia. You can be an e-resident of the country. I wonder, what do you think? In this new era, that like everything is like turning a little bit virtual, like a little bit AI.
Yeah.
What it means to be Canadian, American, European, Italian, whatnot have you, and do you ever see somehow digitizing the citizenship, that I have access to certain perks as long as I'm aligned with Canada, and I can be anywhere, and live as a Canadian, but
Yeah.
still, yeah, it's a little bit of a
I mean, this is a very big question. Like what you're talking about, it has so many components to it, from like network states that Balaji talks about to like independent cities that he mentions, like Prospera, which is for communities that started online and started living in Estonia is actually probably one of the first examples of something like that, where they allowed that to happen.
And they're also very advanced in voting technology, by the way. Fun fact about Estonia.
They're very interesting. They are
is
I
that?
think they're one of the
What
most
is that?
digitized countries.
Voting,
ahead.
like just voting technology. So like electoral, like voting, that that I have a friend who's in that space, and he got acquired by I think he got acquired by an Estonian company, but
Oh,
they're actually very ahead. Like when the world looks
Yeah.
to them, and maybe a few others, but they're for voting technology. So when you go vote,
Yeah. Even that, they've been advanced. I think they've been doing these like e-residence permits like for at least 10 years now. This has been a thing for a while.
really?
They've been very ahead. Yeah. Estonia's been ahead of the curve for a while. We knew it was like a startup tech, like actively digital solution developing hub, because they're very small and nimble, right? They can do it. And they figured out that there was a very viable revenue stream for their country. And also what you don't see is them having a lot of articles about immigration being a big problem, because they were very meticulous about how they
because
executed on that.
when they see immigration, like they're interacting with like with people, they're like, oh my god, I'm happy you're here. Like I'm happy. I'm not saying
Yeah.
immigrants in general, but let's be frank though. It's like, and it's a psychology aspect and a statistical aspect. If you
Yeah.
keep meeting anything, if you keep seeing this beautiful diamond, and you keep seeing diamonds might be a bad example because they're not rare, but let's say a rare gem, right? A rare
Yeah.
ruby, and you see them everywhere, right? To you it's not rare, to someone else it's rare because they don't have it, but to you it's not. And we have immigration. When you keep interacting with people all the time, and you're seeing people from the one country predominantly, because our immigration skewed in one country versus others, and it lacks diversity, etc. As a psychologist, you're going to be desensitized to it. But when you meet this person who's a neuroscientist, for example, I have someone who's a PhD staying with me right now in neuroscience, built this amazing technology that helps you actually quantify physical movements to cognitive, and it's crazy what they've done. And they're not from Canada. It's just like learning. I'm like, wow, like you should be here. Better yet, you should have global mobility to move with ease around the world. Like the more you are moving and traveling, the more people you're talking to, the more people who are seeing what you're doing, the healthier of a world we're going to have. We should prioritize.
The knowledge is spreading. Yeah.
We should prioritize what you're doing. We have Nexus cards. We have all these special security cards. We should be looking at individuals and understanding, hey, who are you? What are you doing? What are us three on a call? We have specialized knowledge that if we share with other countries would be very helpful, right? Now we have to lean on a conference, and then you or me, I have to make a decision. I'm going to do this. But wouldn't it be great if someone called me and said, hey, Blayne, we know what you're up to. We would love for you to talk to this team here. You don't have to worry about visas, all that. Like, boom, you go there and travel. So can we take that conference environment, right, and extrapolate that as a global environment, right? And then how do we do that? So that's just one example of what I guess global citizenship, right? But Nino, sorry, I interrupted you. I'll let you.
No, it was a very valid point. And one thing I wanted to mention, this is actually going to be one of the biggest conversation topics in the speech I'll be giving as well. It was generally to use more technology
Where
to
is
make
the
more informed
speech if you
policy.
want to share with the audience?
It's going to be at the University of Waterloo in November. And one of the things that I will post about on LinkedIn, so please stay tuned if you are interested in hearing it. But one of the main topics, aside from using technology for more informed policy making, is what does it mean to be a citizen? Like, what responsibility comes with being a citizen? And I feel like over the past, since the world has become more globalized, like Blayne mentioned, we've kind of forgotten that aspect of it. Like, oh yeah, I'm Canadian, or I'm like, Georgian, I'm Russian, I'm Ukrainian, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like you're like, okay, like this is, I'm a citizen of a country. And unless something happens that reminds you that you're a citizen of this country, it's like in the back of your head. But I think in today's world, with what's going on, citizenship is becoming more important. And what are your obligations as a citizen of a country? What are you, like, for example, the government of Canada puts out surveys where they ask for, there was, I believe, an immigration one not so long ago where they were asking about the public's opinion. As a citizen of a country, what is your responsibility when these kind of surveys come out? And that's a very big question for you, because if you're a citizen and you care about the society that you're living in, about the country that is being built, should you be obligated to contribute? Should you be obligated to go vote? Are you supposed to be doing these things? And I think now is the time when this conversation is happening a lot, especially in Canada, when we're seeing a lot of trickle down effects of us maybe not caring that much for a long period of time. At least that's my point of view. So I think that's the direction we're heading in. That, and I think there's also going to be a lot more opportunity for communities to be built outside of countries. And that's what Blayne was talking about. And that's what the work of a lot of Silicon Valley people is about. How can we build network states and communities outside of countries? That would be for like-minded people that get special access to things. But that's a much bigger topic, if you ask me. That, yeah.
I just Blayne, go ahead, please.
No, just that point, like it's an exciting time. There's a lot going on. Like, Nino's doing a lot of talks and sharing, that perspective of citizenship, global immigration. I'm still very involved in immigration, but I've also taken a path in terms of understanding what I believe the new world would start shaping like. And I think it's based on principles that help align us as healthy humans, right? So, of recent, and I'll be sharing more information, but I really started to travel down the yoga perspective, not physical yoga and stretching, but I mean the actual ancient teachings of yoga. And yoga is a way of living. And a lot of people don't know that because they just think it's Lululemon world, but it's completely opposite. Lululemon is such a bad representative of yoga, actually. It's poisonous materials.
Canadian representative, anyways.
I'll cross that bridge later. But anyways, I think what I'm saying is, if you are in immigration and you're looking at the world, we have to see what kind of world do we want to create, right? And Nino's doing her work and sharing her knowledge and experience in the world we want to create. And I'm looking at the history and the past of ancient ways that's really worked well. Yoga, from a physical aspect, has helped so many people, but there's other aspects of that creates a well-rounded human and an environment for us to thrive in. And it's not tied to a specific thought process. It's tied to the ingredients needed for a healthy life and making sure that you're living in those ingredients. So that's that's where I've been putting some attention into for the last few months. In that, I personally lost 20 pounds, not because of yoga, because of stress management. I've lost over 20 pounds, and I couldn't believe I lost in like less than 2 months. So
I saw it's truly did happen.
So, but what's happened is that
there's hearing about that as well, like Blayne, somewhere about this journey and like some of the findings. Is there anything I can find out about?
Yeah, to be honest, I think you might be the first person I've actually been openly public about on a public channel about this. So I've been, it's something dear to my heart as well. And there's a spiritual context to it as well as a health. So I'm just feeling it out and seeing, but yeah, I will be sharing more and upcoming soon, very soon, and sharing more about that. But going to a global world. So going back to your topic, just to quickly tap on that, we are definitely moving to a global environment, right? But keep in mind, we have e-visas. So no matter what, we're not moving, like e-visas has been the subtle visas, but they're visas, okay? They're visas at the end of the day. Just because you get them in 7 minutes or whatever, it doesn't mean it's, or $7, it doesn't mean it's not a visa. So to think that we're moving to a more interconnected world for global mobility, it's not sure looking that way. We're actually moving to a much more regional authorization side. What I can see happening is the Nexus card, and there's other cards. I could see that rolling out at a higher level, which I think it should. I speak to so many wonderful people, and I'm like, come on, like, how are we screwing this up? What are we doing here? Like, there's so much missed opportunity. And immigration professionals such as myself who speak to people regularly, like, we could tell you we're missing some crazy opportunities right now, huge opportunities now. And it's been like that for since I've been in the industry for 15 years. So it's been like that for 15 years. But we need to start thinking of how to do that. So global, I could see that. So anyone who's listened to this podcast, I would say you want to look to some programs. The U.S. has the program, the O1 program, for example. I think it's
Yeah,
O1.
it's quite popular now.
You know,
O1,
the
yeah.
O1. Okay, so what do they look at? They look at your background, your professional background, speaking engagements, awards. Like, who are you? What are you doing? Something special? What's up?
Yeah.
For those who are
Very rigorous application process.
yeah, for anyone that's in there, look to that as a template. Like, start building your life around that. You know, like, start being a little bit more public with your thoughts, or well, sorry, backtrack. Be a little bit more public with your professional perspectives, right? And where you are, and do that.
Be extraordinary, basically, to summarize.
For those who are, because I know you deal with the business folks and startup folks, for example, and stuff, but start thinking that way. Start putting that out there, because maybe that's going to play a role in the future of immigration, right? So that's what I think. I think that's, and I'm hoping I see something like that. When it comes to global mobility, I don't know how I feel about it yet, because I've traveled a lot. There's a lot of different cultures out there. There's a lot of different aspects. There's a lot of considerations out there. There is tax dollars at the end of the day being paid out. Like, I don't, I think that we need to be thoughtful of how we do global mobility, but I do think that that's the future as well. And as AI, if you think AI and technology is going to bring the cost of a lot of things down, that means the world is going to become hopefully more of an equal environment. So then, moving from one place to another shouldn't really make much of a difference, because, our cost of living has dropped down.
That's the day when we get to that level. But until we get to that level, I don't think that's going to be happening. I think for now, in fact, we're a little bit.
I think in the next 5-10 years as well, like, because we did a full-on deep research in terms of just strategizing what to do for the NextStars next 5 years. Also opportunities for people to relocate. So
you just broke up a little bit. So maybe
I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
So it broke up after you said deep research.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did a deep research, and we realized that over the next five years at least, we anticipate a huge number of people wanting to relocate, and a very few valid and viable programs, at least in the West, as we collectively know in the West, for them to relocate. And that's why it got me thinking, maybe in order for one to become Canadian, they don't have to physically be in Canada. They can at least, claim some of the perks while maintaining their residency in their own country. But they're mentally aligned, with that purpose, with that dream, and they feel obligated to give back, to participate, and all that. And that's kind of what I thought. It was my thought after that.
Maybe if we follow an Estonia model, it could be
that's what I was thinking, because each country has a good brand, and Canada's is actually very good. It's very well known. It resembles peace, quality, and I think if there is the vetting, and continuous checking on the status of being Canadian, I think that can be actually even monetized, productized as a service, because then the government can offer services to those people, that they aligned with Canada, they're in their own country, they're advocating for Canadian interest, obviously, and they're very open about it, and they might want to pay a little bit, to have access to that affiliation,
infrastructure, to the support.
Infrastructure.
Well, let's see what direction they go in with November. My intuition is telling me that they're going to be a little bit more conservative initially, at least while they get their footing and figure out which direction they want the country to be developing. And at least immigration wise, they're going to be more conservative from my perspective. But let's see where they go, because I think those opportunities will arise as, immigration used to bring a lot of money into the country. That source is going to be cut off. They're definitely going to be looking for a new source of revenue. So that opens up opportunity, right?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, guys. We will put the links to your LinkedIn profiles on the post, and this will also be posted on YouTube. Appreciate everyone who watched us live and is going to watch this video. Please give us a like and follow. It doesn't cost you anything, but it surely makes us feel better and it gives us meaning. Thank you, and on to the next one.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
You guys.